And now, it's working for me now. Yes, it seems to now actually be running there. So yeah, hopefully you can see me. Actually, a quick question for you: could you hear anything I was saying before this point in time? Okay, Agent 47 saying nope. Okay, so we're unable to hear anything before this point in time. So that means that this is the the new start of the webinar. I had been talking for a couple minutes as if it was live, so that's been fun. I guess that counts as extra practice. Sorry for the technical difficulties and in your mind for starting late. But we're here now. We've made it, and so we can kick things off. And actually, I'm seeing more people in the call anyway. So I guess that was extra waiting time for those to join. But let's get started and let's run through the beginning. And yeah, for a good place to start is who am I? I am Ollie. I am the developer relations lead at Kudos. And so my day-to-day sort of all revolves around the developer experience, speaking to engineers, supporting them in building on the Kudos platform. And so, yeah, I'm also joined in the chat with Aisha. So you'll see a little gold star next to Aisha's name. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask Aisha in the chat. Yeah, so this webinar will probably last until about the end of the hour. And it is being recorded. I believe it's also being broadcast onto YouTube now that we actually got things live. So I think some people are also watching in over there. But yeah, first things first, there is a QR code in the corner of the screen. Feel free to scan that if you want a few good additional dev resources. Aisha has also actually posted the same link of it. It's that link tree to Kudo Dev. That's just a good first place to go to in terms of some of the dev resources around getting started with building on Kudos and building in the Cosmos ecosystem. And so I'll run through a little bit of those resources towards the end as well. But for now, I'm here to introduce you to the Kudos blockchain development program with Showcode. So we've been very excited to work with Showcode and have been doing so over the past few weeks and months. Showcode received the first of our foundation grants from the Kudos Foundation. And so, yeah, we had a really cool hackathon a few weeks ago, the Athena hackathon. So I was there and we saw some cool things getting built there. And so I think some of you may also be from that Athena hackathon as well. So welcome back if that's you. But from the side of where we're going with this program is it is a blockchain development program that'll get you to a point of being able to call yourself a blockchain developer. And so what it will be is it'll be a lot of the different aspects around building decentralized applications on blockchains. So this first session is much more informal. It's about getting the gist of the program across to you and just finding some spaces where you might be keen to jump in to the various resources. And with that, we've got just the first session, quite an easy one. And so anyone can actually still sign up during the first week as well. And we're happy to catch anyone up during that time too. Then on the following sessions, you will see an introduction to the Rust programming language, Cosmosm, writing smart contracts, minting your own NFTs, and then also building a front end to help help with the user experience of those different applications there as well. And finally, it'll end with some chat with the Kudos ecosystem and some of our partners, and with an so I'm also seeing another mention in the chat. Has the event started? So hopefully Jason can see. But it seems it's good. Okay, cool. But yeah, welcome, Jason. I can actually see that there have been a few more joiners, another 6 joiners in the attendees as well. So welcome to you. But yeah, so the program will end with a chat with some of the Kudos ecosystem and partners, and then ultimately it'll be building a decentralized application that is good for the world. It's a social good challenge. And a lot of this will be happening through the showcode platform, and you'll be able to submit your code through there. Anyone who has experience with any programming language is welcomed to this program. And so if you don't have programming experience already, we still welcome you, but you will find things a little bit more tricky. But if you are diligent enough, I am more than happy to support your journey there anyway. But if you have some experience in any language, you're already off to the races. And so the languages we'll be using are Rust, and you'll see why shortly in this presentation, as that is the smart contract language for Kudos. But you'll also be doing some front-end stuff that, if you've done some front-end work before in JavaScript, TypeScript, in platforms like React, you will be relatively familiar with things there too. But let's get into the slideshow as well. So I've titled it New Decentralized Application Projects and an Intro to Kudos. So first place to start is, what is Web3? And so not everyone here knows what Web3 is, and it is a little bit of an obscure topic, but let's try and see if we can get it across to you in terms of some fun ways of looking at the history of the web. And that's where we'll start. We'll go back to the mid-90s, where the web first started becoming very popular. And that was with Web 1. It was known sort of now as the read-only web. And you can think of its characteristics by very large organizations with very large servers being able to distribute content that other people could consume. So it was this idea of large organizations, and everyone else was reading what those organizations were pushing to this Web 1 ecosystem and this Web 1 world that we were living in. But then in the mid-noughties, we see Web 2 starting to become more prominent. One of its main characteristics and its main poster childs was the rise of social media. And so Web 2 gave us this ability to not only read from the web, but also write to it. And we started to be able to, as the end user, become content creators, start making YouTube videos, start making posts on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, all of these platforms where we started being able to write to the web as well. And so it became this bi-directional sort of handshake of the new era of the web. And now we've seen that for the past 15 or so years. Well, no, 25 years. Sorry, I'm can't even count today. But yeah, we've seen that for a fairly long time. And so with that, we're starting to enter into this new phase of the web. And that's the idea of Web 3. Where, thanks to a lot of developments in some modern technologies over the past little while, we have now reached the ability to not only read and write, but we've also added this characteristic of ownership, digital ownership. And that happens through a lot of the platforms underneath Web 3, predominantly of which is blockchain technology, which gives us rise to this ability to distribute a database over many nodes, and every node reaches consensus on that database. So if everyone agrees on the database, then everyone can agree on who owns what is represented on that database. And so thanks to that idea of blockchain and that idea of distributed databases, we're now able to add that word own to the web we know and love. And that's where Kudos is well positioned, and that's where we see a lot of the way the web is going now. And I'm guessing some of you do too if you are here for a blockchain development program. But now, what is the main sort of application within Web3? What is its characterized way of interacting? And that is through a decentralized application, or a dApp or a dApp, call it what you like. It is the idea of an application that is built on a decentralized network that combines a smart contract and a front-end user interface. And so we've got this idea of a smart contract underneath and the front end, which gives us a user experience and a user interface to interact with that underlying smart contract. And so that term smart contract is quite important there because that is a new term that some of you may not have heard of, because that's also a sort of a characteristic of the modern web. Even though the term came about in, I think it was in 1997 from computer scientist Nick Szabo. I don't think I'm saying his name correctly, but yeah, even though the idea of a smart contract has been around for a while, it's now come to the fore with these blockchain networks. And the key to what a smart contract is kind of in the name. If you think of a normal contract, a contract you'd sign with a person lending you a mortgage on a house, or the deed for the sale of a house, or a transfer of stock in a company, those contracts are, the traditional contracts are a document of paper that it has a signature at the bottom. Now, a smart contract, on the other hand, is the idea of writing basically that same contract, but instead of writing it with pen and ink or typing it out as a document, we're now typing it out in code. And so that smart contract, the word smart is that it is now automatically executable based on the set of interactions or inputs you give that contract. So you can write into these contracts, when something happens, do something. And so that gives us this autonomous way of having code enact these transfers of value and transfers of state on a decentralized network. That's hugely important because a large number of companies exist in this Web 2 world because they are simply just a middleman to a certain transaction, where two people on either side of the world have to trust a central entity in the middle in order for a transaction to happen. And you can think of that with money transfers going through things like Visa or MasterCard or Stripe or any of those platforms, or platforms like eBay, where buyers and sellers are facilitated by the sort of a central person in the middle, or a centralized entity. But now with smart contracts, we can interact directly with each other in a purely trustful way, coming from an expectation of pure distrust in everyone on the planet. So if we assume that no one can be trusted, we need a network that allows us to simply trust the code. And that's what this idea of smart contracts and decentralized consensus do bring to the table there. And so that's pretty exciting for what is now possible thanks to these new technologies that have been developed over the past years. So that also brings us to, where is Kudos involved in all of this? So what is Kudos? And so we've got sort of two distinct parts to Cudos, and it is the Cudos blockchain and the Kudo Compute platform. And over time, and hopefully pretty soon, we are linking the two together in a pretty neat way. But ultimately, having a look at the Cudos blockchain side, we have our own layer 1 blockchain within the Cosmos network of blockchains. And so we are within the Cosmos SDK ecosystem. Our blockchain is its own decentralized database that facilitates things like smart contracts, like cryptocurrencies and NFTs, and some of those other applications you've heard of. But we support these custom smart contracts that allow you to write these ownership transferring contracts on the blockchain itself. But what is important is that because blockchains require consensus, they are very feature driven and inherently built for transactions of ownership. They're not built for things like real-time 3D workloads, hosting very dynamic front ends of applications, rendering movies, hosting video game servers, things like that. Not all of that can be done on blockchains because they're just not built for that. And the idea of reaching a point of consensus between many different computers takes too long for a lot of those types of applications to be possible on these decentralized networks. So we've got this Kudo Compute cloud network as well, and that's to facilitate the other side of computing that we need within Web3, and that's for that real-time, powerful performance computing through virtual machines, through a cloud computing infrastructure that is quite similar to things you may have seen in the cloud space already. Things like Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Platform, Microsoft Azure, DigitalOcean, things like that. So we have our own one of those. However, where it takes things in a different direction is that anyone can be a supplier to that network. So the suppliers are not just a single set of data centers owned all by a single entity, but it can be any entity on the planet that has systems to loan to the platform. But now where that gets really interesting is that technically most of us have a lot of systems that could be loaned to the platform at any one time. There is an incredible amount of idle computing power lying around, things like laptops that aren't being used, your phone if it reaches 100% charge at night, games consoles when they're not on, self-driving car processors and graphics cards, things like that, where the idle computing power is sitting lying around and not being used. And so we're bringing a platform that, while at the moment it is specific to data centers, we have the intention of getting to smaller and smaller devices being able to add their computing to the network, which importantly means you can actually rent out any spare computing that is available in your house in whatever space you have computing power. So you can be earning money for the spare idle computing that you aren't actually using. And so yeah, with that, you are able to earn a crypto for renting out. And so you can sort of think of this as like an Airbnb, but instead of for houses, you are doing it for computing resources instead. This has a lot of huge benefits to it, many of which are in the sustainability world. So data centers use a very vast amount of energy. They produce incredible amounts of e-waste, and they are very thirsty. They drink a ridiculous amount of water. The state of California alone, the data centers just in that one state drink 185,000 Olympic swimming pools of water a year just to keep them cool. And so if we're moving away from just using data centers. We get to reduce the energy footprint of data centers. We get to reduce the water footprint of data centers and the e-waste footprint as well. And ultimately, the devices that are powering the Kudo Compute network are devices that have already been paid for. So it means that it brings the price of cloud computing down as well. So it makes it more accessible to more people in more places, and it allows these compute units to get closer to the edge of where computing needs to be run. And so we're pretty excited about the Kudo Compute platform and the Cudos blockchain. The Kudo Compute platform went live about a month and a half ago, so we're still pretty new with that. But really cool news, all of you participants will be getting some free compute instance, small instance, to run your front ends on during this hackathon, during this blockchain development program. And so you'll be able to deploy onto that cloud network for free. So that's pretty exciting. And so you'll get a taste of both the blockchain development side, as well as running your programs, the front ends of which on a decentralized cloud computing network as well. So I'm also just keeping an eye on the chat as well. I think Aisha's been pretty fire with some of the stuff coming through. Yeah, so thanks for getting on those as well, Aisha. Yeah, so a little on Rust. So Rust is the world's most loved programming language, and it actually has been for 6 years in a row. So you can actually see the data here. For the 6th year, Rust is the most loved language. And so you can see around 87% of people absolutely love Rust. And that's from 83,000 odd responses in the Stack Overflow survey last year. So a lot of people quite like this relatively new language, Rust. It has a lot of really cool benefits. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because the Cudos platform uses Rust for its smart contracts, which we'll get into a little bit more as well. So if we dig into a little more on Rust, we can see one of the most important things of Rust is our little orange friend in the corner. That is Ferris. So Ferris is a Rustacean, and he is the mascot of the Rust ecosystem. So if you ever see Ferris around, just know that you're dealing with a pretty cool programming language. So yeah, Rust has actually become my favorite programming language. It's relatively general purpose, but is and becoming more so with additional libraries and such, but is extremely useful for high performance tasks on that ensure memory safety with no garbage collector as well. And that's an important aspect of it. And so you're getting very, very good performance from a language that is safe to use. And that's very useful for smart contracts, because running smart contracts on a decentralized network, it's good to have them operate quickly. And it's also good to have them not go wrong in terms of memory and various other safety features there. Rust has a great support for concurrent programming. And so if you are looking at multi-processing, multi-threading, it has great support for things around that. So also good from that speed side on the concurrency front. There's a huge growing number of Rust packages at crates.io. The package manager for Rust Cargo is very good at managing those different packages at crates.io and putting them into your code. And yeah, so that growing number there has been really cool to see a lot of open source contributions to the Rust ecosystem there. There's a vibrant community driving the development of the language. Rust's a beautiful space with awesome engineers who are really, really collaborative and really keen to help out. So it's one of the friendliest places I've found on the internet so far, which is a lot to say in the Web 2 internet we're currently in. Another important thing with Rust is it compiles down to a binary, so it can run on almost anything. It's backwards compatible, and stability is ensured on all devices from standard operating systems down to sort of embedded tiny things out there as well. Now, this one I found pretty interesting myself. I found this a few weeks ago. This is an academic paper by Pereira et al. From 2017 titled Energy Efficiency Across Programming Languages. And it looks at energy, time, and memory effects of different languages on the host system. And so this is an interesting thing to look at, especially when dealing with devices in decentralized natures and devices that have batteries in them. Having a programming language that happens to run incredibly fast and efficiently and in a short space of time means that those devices are more efficient with the energy that they use, more efficient on battery life, and ultimately more efficient for the overall planet too, if they are using less energy. And so we can see here that C came out. So if we just look at the energy column here, we can see that C came out the fastest or most energy efficient of the programming languages. So that was set at the baseline index of 1. Rust was a slight bit more expensive on energy at 1.03. And then we can see as we move down, C++ is still quite efficient. Java has now become about 2 times more costly than running things on C. As we go further down, some of the other popular languages, we can see C is pi times more energy efficient, more energy expensive, 3.14. And Go next, JavaScript 4.45. Ilya's asking, is this paper linked in the dev resources? It isn't, but it is actually linked right here. So I can just drop that into that chat as well. So that should pick up at the same point. Yes. So there is a link to that resource as well. So you can have a read of that. And so, yeah, we can see JavaScript 4.5 times more costly than running C. TypeScript, we're up to 21.5 times. And as we go to PHP, Ruby, Python, which used to be my home language, is 75.88 times more energy costly than running things in C. And so similar number in terms of Rust as well. And so if you were to think about if hypothetically, all of our systems across the entire planet, everything we ever wrote was written in Python, the energy cost would be 75 times greater than if it was written in C, and Rust just a little bit more costly than C there. But that cost is worth it in terms of it being a beautiful language to write and very, very powerful and very useful in a lot of its applications. Very modern language there. An important side of Rust is its ownership model. It's going to be something you'll be having a look at, and it is how it handles memory based on scope of different variables at any point in time. And so, yeah, that ownership model is going to be quite important to how you write Rust, and it'll be one of the main differences of writing Rust to some of the other languages you may have come from in the past. And that ownership model gives it its incredible performance while staying memory safe and not needing a garbage collector. On to the next one. I happened to retweet these 3 tweets like a month or 2 ago, all 3 of them in a row, completely by chance. So this is my Twitter account. So if you scroll down, you'll see those 3 retweets in a row. The first one, Teddy Knox on October 10th. Knowing Rust feels like a superpower. I completely agree with Teddy there. I thought that was just a fun one. The next retweet was from Mark Rosinovich, who is the CTO of Microsoft's Azure. And he says something pretty bold here. Speaking of languages, it's time to halt starting any new projects in C or C++, and use Rust for those scenarios where a non-garbage collected language is required. For the sake of security and reliability, the industry should declare those languages as deprecated, which is a very strong statement on C and C++, which in terms of those efficient languages left, Rust is the one to sort of take over there in the CTO of Microsoft Azure's words as well. And then we see the last retweet here from Shane.stars. Not to mention, building in Cosmosm is faster than Solidity. Fewer things can go wrong. Don't need to drop down to assembly for performance. At some point, app layer innovation may happen in Cosmos first. Still a year behind Ethereum, though. What's interesting there is that the word Rust wasn't actually mentioned, but Cosmosm was instead. And that brings us to how we write contracts on Cosmos-based blockchains, which Cudos is one of. And so we use this platform called Cosmosm, and that's Cosmos WebAssembly, and it supports any language ultimately down the line that compiles to WebAssembly. But for now, Rust is the most popular and is the best supported in the Cosmosm ecosystem. And I mean, it's Rust. It's lovely to write. So it's the platform that's used to actually create those smart contracts. And that's where all of this chat of Rust actually ends up, is that you're going to be using Rust to write smart contracts. They're going to be compiled down to WebAssembly or Cosmosm, and those will then be run on a distributed network of machines so that those machines all agree on the process that you have written in those Rust contracts. And so, yeah, from the next step, though, is that the contract isn't everything. A dApp isn't just the smart contract. The front end is also incredibly important for the user experience. So writing things just as ways of interacting with a database through like a set of rules isn't a great user experience, isn't a great user interface for the end user. So we want to give them something nice to interact with so that they have this front end, this app experience of interacting with a decentralized network underneath. And that's ultimately that app. The D is for the decentralized. So you've got a dApp from that side. We can see here, this is the Osmosis decentralized exchange, a screenshot of it. And you can see there that you are able to swap between the Atom token and the Kudos token, their cryptocurrencies, Kudos being our cryptocurrency, on this platform through a front end, rather than making complex CLI calls to the underlying chain. We've got a nice, neat front end that can do it for us. But that actually brings us to a cool point of getting started with a decentralized app. And so we can see how easy it is to get ourselves going. So I'm gonna give a quick little show here of a very neat tool within the Cosmos ecosystem. It's simply called Create Cosmos App. Some of you may be familiar with scaffolding tools like Create React App. And this is basically that, but where it's specific to connecting to blockchains under the hood. And so all I've done in terms of setup is I have Node and Yarn installed. And so we have an NPM package that's called Create Cosmos App. It's available through those dev resources. And we're going to be using that to create or scaffold a working front end that connects to what we call a wallet, which I'll go through as well. So pretty simple. All we're doing is we're typing Create Cosmos App. We're giving it a name, and I'm going to just say showcode BDP demo. And so we can see we're cloning into the showcode BDP demo. We're going to connect it to a multi-chain. And this will take a little bit of time in terms of scaffolding our project under the hood here. And so we can see it's doing stuff with Yarn at the moment. And so with that, this is, as I mentioned earlier, this allows us to get going with a front end that connects to a wallet. And a wallet is an important consideration when building in Web3. That is the way of signing interactions on a blockchain. So a wallet is what holds your private key, and it allows you to interact with the blockchain provably by showing you are who you are because you hold that private key. And that's why many of you may have heard of the importance of keeping your keys safe, because if you lose those keys, then anyone else can provably say that they are you. So always keep your keys safe, especially when you hold assets of value. I always have this thing on my key ring, which I don't know if you can see in the little corner there, but it says on here, not your keys, not your coins. So an important consideration. And so a wallet is what allows you to interact with your keys. We'll see how that plugs in a moment here. And so we can see that our project has been scaffolded. So all we're going to do is we're going to cd into the directory and yarn dev here. And we can see that that's actually now running on localhost 3000. So just the localhost server. And as it gets things going here, we can see we load up a user interface on the front here. And so with this, we are actually scaffolded to a working decentralized application in essence. And we can see that we can actually wallet connect to anything within the Cosmos ecosystem here. There's many a chain on the Cosmos ecosystem, but we can see that Cudos is one of the ones here. And we can actually see that this has connected to my wallet up here. And so this, when I switch over to the Kudos network, we can actually see that this wallet address here is the exact same that is here. So we have that wallet connection. And so that wallet can now start signing transactions on our behalf. And so that's how easy it is to get going with a pretty neat tool in the Cosmos world. And so gives you a good starting point in terms of a front end to work from. And basically, I'm just trying to show that even though blockchain is pretty new, a lot of the tools have come a long way in terms of being able to get us going very quickly and actually have a great experience with developing in these ecosystems. But yeah, so that actually brings us to the end of the primary demo itself. So if anyone still wants to scan that QR code or just go to the link in the chat, you can head to the link tree there. And so what I will quickly do is I will have a look with you at the dev resources page that is available through that link tree, the first link in the link tree there too. Because yeah, basically there's no specific task based on this introduction. That's why other people can actually join this this call in the next week. So anyone can actually join the blockchain development program up until we start getting into the thick of things. But if you want to go hunting in the meanwhile, strongly suggest it. Go and get a little bit of a head start, get excited by some of the cool stuff that's out there. And that's what this document is. So this is just a quick dev resources that I was updating a little bit earlier today. And so it's just a list of great resources to get you going with building dApps using Rust, Cosmosm, and Cosm.js, as well as other tools. And so just going to read through here the overview of the Kudos stack. The Kudos network is a smart contract-enabled Layer 1 Cosmos blockchain, which facilitates a network of compute infrastructure for running virtual machines. So that's a pretty good one-liner there as to what you're actually doing. It's got a flow here for building your dApps with Kudos. So you're going to write your smart contract in Rust. It's going to compile to Cosmosm. You're going to deploy that onto a blockchain, and you will initialize it. So you actually have to upload it to this distributed database that exists across these many nodes. And then you will initialize that contract with an initial state. And you'll also be able to build your front-end app using something like this Cosmology Tech Create Cosmos app tool that we just showed. And that will then allow you to interact with that contract that exists now on that blockchain. And then we will also be showing you how to deploy your front-end app onto the Kudo Compute network in order to actually host it there. And so we've got a few good resources for some different things within the ecosystem as well. Naturally, so you'll see there's a go-to for each of the topics. So we've got Cudos, Rust, Cosmosm, and Cosm.js with a go-to document for each. So the Cudos docs being our important first point of call for building on the Cudos blockchain. We also have a tool called Kudos Blast, which helps with contract deployment and with interaction with the underlying blockchain. We've got some Kudos sample contracts and code, some of which is from our developer ranges as well there. And then you'll also actually see we've got the Kudos node repo itself. So the node is ultimately what an entity on the blockchain that is a validator is using, but it gives you all of the tools to actually interact with the blockchain as well. Kudos Blast is a layer of abstraction that helps developers with that. But whether you want to go the Kudos Blast route or the actual Kudos node, that's up to you. Rust, so we were chatting about that. The go-to book is often just referred to as the book, which I have a copy of over here. You don't need the physical copy because it's all available online, but it is a great book, very well written. The Rust ecosystem is very good at communicating about the language. Rust isn't usually a language that is taught as a first language, so if you have a bit of programming experience, it will help from that side. The Let's Get Rusty YouTube channel is one of my favorite resources for Rust. So Bogdan, who is the YouTuber there, excuse me, making content. I think my Rust book was a bit dusty. I've been using the online version. So Bogdan on the Let's Get Rusty YouTube channel, absolutely awesome content. Very useful for when you're digging into ownership on Rust as well. And then Rust is also particularly useful for command line applications. So naturally, you can use Rust in a Web 2 sense as well. So if you're not even, after all of this, if you don't happen to be that interested in blockchain in the end of it, you will still have learned an amazing Web 2 language as well, and be able to get into some cool stuff on the Rust side, if you haven't already. Cosmosm, go-to docs on the Cosmosm side, and Area 52 is a very cool Cosmosm tutorial that it takes you step by step through that. So I definitely suggest having a look at Area 52 as well. Cosm.js is some of those interactions with the front end. That is the JavaScript library that helps facilitate those interactions from your UI. And then obviously we've got the Create Cosmos app, and that's the tool that I just showed, that DApp front end scaffolding tool from the team over at Cosmology. Lastly, very cool here, we have how to actually run that Create Cosmos app on Kudo Compute. So these are the steps for getting yourself set up with a Kudo Compute, a virtual machine. We will give you access to the free compute when we get to the NFT and front end section, but you can have a look around the Kudo Compute platform. So long, if you want, you can add your own credit card and you can start paying for it already if you want to try spin something up. But for that next module or 2 modules time, you'll be getting some free compute on it as well. But this just shows you the instructions for how to get going with deploying your Create Cosmos app on a Kudo Compute virtual machine. This neat video that shows you all of the stuff as well. Yeah, so that's been a fairly large amount. I can see there have been some questions in the chat. So again, thanks to Aisha for answering some of those. So Yeah, so Aisha's answered, as far as I can see, most of those there. For those who are asking, there will be calendar events available to be able to join the next of these webinar sessions. I believe the next one is on Thursday next week at the same time. But we will also be having some office hours sessions during the week. And importantly, the Showcode Discord server is where a lot of the chat will happen about anything that you may be struggling with. That's where we will be able to support if you are struggling with any steps along this journey. Yeah, so this will also have been recorded, so you can watch that back as well if you missed any portion of it. I can see some people did join a little bit later there, so stress not. But yeah, ultimately, hopefully we've got a little bit of excitement in terms of building your first blockchain app, or maybe it's not even your first one, and you're just interested in coming from the Ethereum world to the far more fun Rust world and Cosmos world for development there as well. So anyone at any experience can come to this. So also, if you have any friends who are potentially interested over the next week, they can still sign up as well. But it's been absolutely great chatting to you all. I need to have a sip of water to wash whatever that little bit of dust was down. But for now, that's where I'm going to leave you. I will see you on Discord, and I will also see you next week for the next of these webinars. Thanks so much to the Showcode team. Thanks to the Kudos team. Thanks to Aisha in the chat. And thanks most of all to you all for joining. That'll be me. Over and out.